Hello, sister leaders. Dr. Karen here. And look, whenever you see this red background, I have someone with me and they are wonderful. And today is no different. We have Beth Krause. And look, she is a powerhouse. We're not even going to get to how powerful she is today fully, but we're going to tap into a large portion of how wonderful she is. And so, Beth, welcome to the Sister Leaders Podcast community. And why don't you, before we get into some of my questions I have, why don't you share, who you are, who your ideal client is, and what are some of your products and services? Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Karen. I just appreciate, first of all, for you having me here tonight and just want to ask first a question about how many have been told you're feeling fine or everything looks normal, but you know that you're not. Well, that's who I serve. I serve high functioning women ages 35 to 75 that are they're hitting the pavement running, right? You're serving everybody all the time, but then at the end of the day you have hit a brick wall and you're not feeling quite right. But you're being told all the time everything looks great, everything's normal. Then why don't you feel like it? These are the women that I know that you really truly are not being serviced. You're being dismissed, you're not being heard, and you're carrying everything else for everyone while quietly inside you are fatigued, you're inflamed, your hormones are off, your gut struggles, you have stress overload and other ongoing health issues. I see these things through a functional lens because I am a certified functional health and nutrition practitioner, blood work specialist, herbalist, author, and speaker. And this is what I do. I look at people's blood work from a functional lens. And then I come up with all of the things. I see these patterns that traditional healthcare just overlooks because they're not trained. They're not trained to see it in that way.
I love that. So I have questions. This community knows I like to sloop around. And so I've done a little digging. And so we want to get to know you just a little bit deeper. And so my first question is, what does true wellness mean to you beyond just physical health?
True wellness is it is spiritual, it is emotional, and it is physical, but it's also relational. So if you don't have all of those steps in place, you can't heal on each of those things. They're pieces that are missing. So we need to put them together because if you have toxic relationships, you're going to suffer. Your body manifests what that toxic relationship is doing. If you are not solid in your faith, then you are also going to suffer there as well because our walk with God is very important with how we exude our light to others. And then how we can sit in the stillness and be okay, because sometimes it is so, with my journey through cancer, it can be lonely. It can be misunderstanding. And sometimes people don't know how to talk to you if you are going through something that's critical. Um, so, our faith based relationship is very important because it gives us that time to sit in that stillness and have what I consider true peace, finding that true peace. So it's more components than just health.
I love that. And so I think you touched a little bit on this question that I composed, which is you describe yourself first as a child of God, wife, mother, and is it Oma? Oma?
Oma, yes.
Oma. I love that. Love that. How have those identities shaped how you show up in your work today?
Well, it's setting up my generational legacy, right? Because, first of all, I want a firm foundation in Christ Jesus. That is what my whole identity is. Without Him, I don't have any other identity. The other identities that I take on as a wife, a mother, and an Oma would have no fortitude or bandwidth, should I say, because my foundation would be very unsteady or unstable. So that is why my true identity rests in the Lord and how I'm setting up the generations for His kingdom. So that is where my identity starts, and that's where my practice starts too. So when I'm onboarding even clients that come on with me, I don't care where their faith lies, but they know when they're coming on with me that my faith is in Christ. And so that's setting up the foundation for true healing and release, because there's a lot of releasing that happens in every aspect of health, in your mind, in your body, in your spirit, in your tissues. Everything has this release. So when I'm setting this foundation, and even just how I introduce myself as a child of God, a wife, a mother, in that order, we have to have that right order, right? A lot of us as mothers would identify as mothers before even wives, or as wives before a child of God. And we have to have it in the right order.
I love that. So take us back to age 29.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when you received your cancer diagnosis?
Well, as with anybody that would get that diagnosis, it's shocking. Um, First of all, I had just been in a month previous for my exam. I was a nursing mom. I had my youngest daughter at the time was just 2, and I was still nursing due to a critical incident that had happened to her the previous year. So I wasn't ready to quite give that up. But I had nursed all 4 of my children. They were 7 to 2 at that time. And so 1 month before, I was in for my annual exam, and there was nothing there, nothing found. 1 month later, my husband found the lump. And to him, I just said, it's a clogged milk duct. Don't worry about it. So that made sense to him. I knew out of 10 years of nursing that this was not normal, and made the appointment right away the next morning. And that unfolded into having all of these appointments very fast. Within 10 days, we knew that I had cancer and needed to make decisions of surgery and whatnot. And so that is what happened. That's what unfolded. And you go from being a mom, living life, to getting that news. And of course, all sorts of things go through your mind. Am I going to be here for my children as they age? Am I going to make it through? What's going to end up happening? I am doing all the things correct already, that you think, I'm living a healthy lifestyle. I'm eating right. I'm doing all of these things. I was on multiple vitamins at that time. Why? I have no family history. So all these things are going through your mind, and you're thinking, if I'm doing all of this, then why? Why? And um, so that's what was going through my mind. And but yet I still had this peace, and not necessarily, I wouldn't consider it a fear, but it was a driving force of all of these thoughts, all of these things I wanted to put into place just in case. And that's what kind of drove, like, I was already thinking before I even went through the surgery, okay, I need to get a wig. I need to this, that, and the other, because I want my children to see me as normal throughout everything. I want everything to be as normal as possible for them. And then I need to figure out, what do I need to change or shift so that I can assure I will be here. But as I was doing, I was, hear me say, I was doing all of these things, the Lord reminded me that He was in control and that I needed to sit and be still so I could hear Him. And that is when He gave me Joshua 1:9. And that was my fighting state, because He's preparing Joshua for the battle. And He's like, have I not commanded you? Do not be afraid. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. Never will I forsake you, never will I leave you. And here He, as you read through that, it's not just Joshua 9, it's Joshua 8, 9, and 10, where He's preparing him. He's telling him, do not be afraid. I've commanded you, do not be afraid. And telling him, I will never leave you. And that's repeated throughout, from the Old Testament throughout the New Testament. Do not be afraid. I will not leave you. And I rested in that through my whole journey. And to the point where my children today feel as if it was just normal.
Wow. So, one more question about that time in your life. And so you chose chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. What informed that decision?
Actually, if I knew if I knew then what I know now, I would not have made those same decisions. But I'm still here to talk about my journey. Um, I It was actually everything that was very fast moving, quick decisions, small children, and not having somebody say, whoa, let's slow down a minute and let's really sit with these decisions and what they will mean moving forward for you. Um, what type of residual effects will you maybe have? What alternative things may be available to you? Um, Different things like that that was not talked about back then. But then again, this was 28 years ago. So I'm a 28-year warrior. I don't, yes, thank you. I don't identify as a survivor. I'm a warrior, because He set me up to be a warrior, not a survivor. So I identify as that. Um, so going through that 28 years ago, there wasn't a lot of alternative holistic care that was even talked about. And that is why I do what I do now. So it set me up on this trajectory of exploration, more certification, and diving into the functional health space, because I want to provide more information and more of a broad spectrum overview for people that are searching for something that is less invasive and give them more options.
And I have one more question before we move beyond that because I want to go into, but this will set us up for the next set of questions. And the last question I have about that point in your life was what was the hardest moment during that 15-year period of side effects?
All of the time that it took, every time I'd go back for another checkup, have to have another biopsy because they found something, um, having the fatigue, the memory loss, and I still struggle with some of that. It's difficult for me to try to remember, like if I'm giving a presentation, if I don't have notes, if I'm speaking, trying to keep my thoughts in order because I do struggle with what they call chemo brain. The chemotherapy, and it some of it goes away. It's not as bad now as it was at first, but I still do have some of that residual effect. Um, but the time that it took away from my kids, all the appointments, because every time they found something, it was another follow-up appointment, it was another test, it was another this, another that. And then that always is sitting in the back of your mind. Um, what if, the what if? And so it is, unless you shift your mindset, it can become an identity. The word cancer can start to become your identity. And I never wanted that to take hold. So that was kind of the physical and emotional struggle. And so I'll share this with you. When I went through radiation, I didn't want to ring the bell. After I went through all of my chemo and all of my radiation, at the end, you finish and they give you a bell to ring. You ring the bell. You've seen a lot of people ring their bell because they're done with all of their treatments. They've finished the process. I didn't want to ring it. I didn't, it just made me feel, uh, first of all, I didn't feel like I suffered enough. I didn't feel like I had suffered enough to ring the bell when I saw other people going through such horrific cancer experiences. I went through all of the physical things. I lost my hair. Did all of that. My first and my fourth treatment was horrendous, but I still didn't feel that I had suffered like I saw so many of the other cancer survivors suffering. So I didn't feel as if I had earned the right to ring that bell, which that's, if anybody else that I'm speaking to can connect with that in your audience, don't, I understand what you're feeling like, and that's your journey, but you've earned it. You've earned that right because you don't have to suffer. Christ took that to the cross for us. And so our journey is our journey because it's emotional and it's physical. So sometimes the emotional journey of just having the word cancer attached to you is hard to go through that journey because you do lose relationships once you've been diagnosed with cancer. Some get stronger and some fade away because people don't know how to relate to you. You're the same person, but they don't know how to deal with the word cancer. So it changes dynamics. But anyway, back to the bell. I did not know that I was still struggling with that until my colleague and I were releasing a book later this year called Just One Touch. And it is our both of our cancer journeys written back and forth between our stories. And we had very different stories, two different types of cancer, but our walk and our realization in Christ throughout our cancer stories are very woven together. And so that's going to be releasing later on this year. Through that writing of that book, I didn't realize how much that ringing of the bell had emotionally affected me all these years later until we started writing that book. And so I had to sit with that. And the first few times I even had mentioned it to anybody, I was overwhelmed with emotion. So I just want anybody that's listening to this to know that years later, I mean, we're 28 years later, and that really still affected me. So you can still allow for those feelings. So even 15 years, I had physical things happening, but 28 years later now, I still had emotional things that I didn't think were there, but it came back up and out. And so I consider that still going through the healing process, and the Lord revealed that to me.
Wow. I know some people may have a problem processing that because it's almost as interpreting that there is no timeline on when things may hit you later.
Right.
And you don't know how significant it's going to be. You don't know when it's gonna, if it's gonna hit you later, when it's gonna hit you later, how significant it's gonna be. And so, yeah, that is that's profound. And it may not hit everybody later because you didn't ring the bell, but it was the whole act of not ringing the bell and that whole process and what went into that, why you didn't, that still caused you to revisit that later.
Right.
So, love that. So, let's move into Beth, who seeking other alternatives. And so, was there a specific moment or event that kind of pushed you towards natural healing?
It was actually that pivotal moment in my life that started out my seeking the natural cause healing, because here I was in my 20s on between medication and um, vitamins and minerals. I was on 60 some pills a day, mostly vitamins, thinking I was doing all the right things for my body, and then still ended up with cancer. So
Mm,
after I went through all of that treatment and all of the surgery and all of that stuff, I thought, okay, what am I doing wrong? I need to start seeking something different. I need to do something different. So then I stopped everything and started readjusting my diet. So I started from basic, bare bones, went vegan for a while, and then I started adding in more animal protein. And then I went vegetarian, and then I was from the get go went gluten free off the rip, gluten free, sugar free, dairy free. And then little by little started adding a few things back in, where now I just don't eat red meat or pork. Um, and then I limit my dairy intake. I never have enjoyed a ton of dairy. Um, and then sugar, I try to limit as much as possible as well. And um, so that's where I started with that. And then cut way back and went to herbals versus just straight up um, uh, just vitamins, going to nutraceuticals versus just vitamin therapy, and seeing the shift in my body and how that has helped. Now, I am not discounting the traditional medical route at all. So don't there is a time and a place and a need for that avenue as well. So I'm not discounting that at all. I don't want any doctors out there. I have some really good relationships with some very good doctors. And so I don't want to discount everything that they stand for as well. So there's a time and a place. I just think they should play in the functional health and traditional medicine should play in the same sandbox more often and nicer together, if that makes sense.
So yeah, so I like that sentence because that makes it easier to go into my next question, which is for our listening community. Can you define what is functional health and how is it different from traditional medicine?
Yes, traditional medicine looks at broader ranges for the community that is already ill. So you're looking at ranges that are optimal for a broad range of people from a sickness model, not from a health model. Functional health looks at smaller ranges for optimum performance, for optimum well being, for a wellness model, not a sickness model. So our ranges are smaller. And then we approach things from the root cause, not from the symptomatic cause. So symptoms are what are happening when your body's already been screaming at you. So
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
always I talk about it about listening without ears. If you can listen with to your body without your ears. Because if we really sit, you can go, oh, and breathe. You can feel like, oh yeah, that hurts there. Maybe I should figure out why that started hurting or when that started hurting. Or, oh, you know, my tooth has been hurting for like a month. Why didn't I notice that sooner? Well, now the pain is signaling more. And now you probably have a bigger cavity or whatever. I'm
mm-hmm,
just
mm-hmm.
picking that out. But if you listen to your body before it starts screaming and you have these symptoms, you can start noticing the patterns. Like maybe you started not sleeping several nights in a row. Maybe you started having dry mouth or a hoarse throat, or you started having what we call dumping syndrome after you eat, or maybe the other direction and you can't go to the bathroom, just different things like
Mm-hmm.
that. These are all cues that something's off in your body. And so we want to get to the root cause of why that's happening versus dealing with just the symptoms.
I love that. It has to also do with, and this isn't one of my questions, but again, it's just moving into that. It has to do with the change in behavior. For instance, when people have a headache, they just immediately reach for an aspirin or a Tylenol instead
Right.
of trying to figure out why is my head hurting,
Correct.
and so I think that is the most simplest form of how when I hear you say what you say, is that it does require for us to think differently when symptoms show themselves. Because many times we are very creatures of habit in how we address certain things, and we minimize certain things as common, nothing. Headache. A headache is not viewed as anything big, but a headache could be huge if you have a headache every day. uh, you know,
Right.
yeah, and at what point do you realize it's not just a headache? It is maybe, like you say, the root cause of something that has really just accelerated now and just have grown into something huge enough where you can't just assume it's just a headache. And so, yeah,
Right.
I like that. So, another question I have, have a few questions about functional health and natural healing is, how did you begin rebuilding your health from the inside out? Is one of the questions that I have. So it must have been something I read.
Yeah. So starting with food, whole foods, and you have to start one of two places because we have this gut brain barrier. So one of the places is your gut because your gut and your brain are they are connected. And your brain has, holds your central nervous system. Your vagus nerve runs from your brain all the way through. It's the largest um, nerve that runs from your brain into the organs in your body. So it controls how we breathe. It controls how the organs are taking on stress or releasing stress. And so if that's off, then our gut does not also work very well. On the flip side, if our gut is not working well, then our vagus nerve does not respond well. So it's kind of this give and take. But getting the microbiome in the gut healthier helps with the release of the toxins from everything that, from a cancer standpoint, helps release those toxins because they're killing everything when you go through chemotherapy. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to release some of these toxins. And so learning how to get your gut working for you instead of against you, what nutrients you need, what if you need probiotics, prebiotics, how to get that terrain working again, and the motility. That's how everything moves through your digestive system, and understanding what kind of food your body needs and how you react to that food makes a big difference. So that is how you start to heal from the inside out. Now there's another layer to that, going back to the brain and the nervous system. When you walk into um, a room, I'm gonna go with this because it's the easiest one, because so many of us have layers to past trauma or a traumatic event that happened in our life, or perhaps a traumatic health incident. But let's talk about, because we're speakers or we've been in rooms where maybe it was really hard. Maybe we had a really difficult um, travel that just like threw you through a loop, made you running late, even when you were very organized or something, and you had to rush into whatever room you were speaking in. And then when you got there, everything was not familiar because you didn't have time to rehearse, or you didn't have time to feel out the room or the stage or anything. And you were a little nervous to be in that room in the first place. So if you don't have time to calm that nervous system and breathe and ground yourself to that room and be able to look around and find something that you can fixate on just to get familiar with that room, your nervous system locks down and it goes into this fight response, and it gets very tense. So your breathing gets harder, shorter, more shallow, and your digestion slows down. And it like gets contracted. Your motility does not go. Or for some people, if you are you have hypermotility, that's when that dumping syndrome happens, and all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
you have to find a bathroom really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
because now you're either in that freeze and fight or you're in that flight. But it's your nervous system that's going to be controlling that situation. So they're connected. And
Wow.
that's when you really have to ground that situation. And we all have something in our life. If we're not constantly checking with our nervous system, then we're not letting go of it. We're not grounding it and we're not working through it. And it could be something that's immediate and acute, like that situation, or it could be past, like trauma that we've gone through. Or maybe it's a toxic relationship where we need to back away from. Or maybe it's something we need to work through with somebody with forgiveness. Or maybe it's our own anger issues or grief that we're working through. These types of things are exactly what I talk about in the 5 pillars of health through the book that I just wrote and released in December on Take Out the Trash. These are all interconnected. And so that's what functional health is. It's putting all of these systems together, and we function on a system, the system-based health model versus the symptom-based.
So it's that's what makes it holistic.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I'm getting it. I'm not
Are
the
you getting
smartest
it?
person on the block, but I'm getting it. I'm getting it. So let's talk about some positive things. I like that because I view that as positive. How you just
Yes.
explained and broke that down, the holistic way of health, holistic healing, holistic health, how the body works, how it's all connected, and the awareness that we need to have about that. So, what are some early wins that people can experience when they make a shift to a more holistic approach in terms of
Well,
health?
I thank you that you even brought that up because I am going to have a link to my morning routine. And
Okay.
your morning routine, it's not just in the morning, but it's your you we all operate on a 24-hour clock. We have 24 hours in a day, and your body doesn't stop, right? So we start right away in the morning, setting ourselves up for the evening. And so an immediate win is trying to get that first morning sunlight. Get that first morning sunlight in. And if you can get in a walk right away in the morning, I'm not talking a long, laborious walk. I'm talking about a 10-minute quick walk in the fresh air. If that's not doable, open up a window, even in the wintertime. Um, just trying to get some fresh air and with that first morning sunlight and let the sunlight actually hit your eyes because that helps reset your circadian rhythm and helps shift. And that's really, it's important for everybody, but especially for women because we are so hormonally complex. So that first morning sunlight is a quick win and it's something easy that we can do. And then if you are able to see the evening sunset, again, same thing. Let that evening sunset get on your eyeballs. And who doesn't like to see a sunrise and a sunset if we're able to, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. The Lord did that intentionally.
Yep. Yeah. I love it. I love it. So this has been wonderful, Beth. I mentioned to you we're gonna have to bring you back because look, I'm not even on page 2 yet.
Oh
I'm
no.
I have so many questions. I have so many questions because we when I say we, the average person is taught and brought up on on regular, I'll say regular health, regular medicine, viewing things in the regular way. Take this if this is going on, go to the doctor. If the doctor prescribes you something, he or she is the expert, you go ahead and take that. You may get a second opinion or whatever, but okay, but still they're the experts and we don't educate ourselves enough, question ourselves enough, to know what to ask about or who to ask to further educate ourselves. And we don't ask about alternatives too much because when situations happen and cancer has inflicted my family and other things as well, which most people know somebody who has had cancer. That's how prevalent it is. Um, there's a fear associated with it. And
Yes.
so fear will stop you from asking a whole lot of questions. You just want a quick fix, to make it go away, to make our loved one better, to get us back to where we were before we found out that our loved one had cancer or something like that. And so, um, I really do value and appreciate your expertise and, in natural healing and in functional health, because there are alternatives out here.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are never exposed to them. You can still make the choice to traditional medicine, but at least be exposed to the information and then make the choice as opposed to not even hearing the information or considering the information for your decision. And so that's why I value your expertise so much. And so tell the sister leaders community what you have going on, how they can stay connected with you, how they can support you. You mentioned your book several times, is where they can get that from. What is that in what form is that? Is that straight book form? Do you have ebooks? So just tell everything. Tell everything, Beth.
Okay. My book is on Amazon and you can get it in ebook form or in a paperback. And it's called Take Out the Trash, a faith-filled journey to clear the clutter, cleanse the body, and claim your temple. And so that is on Amazon, ready to go. And the one that's going to be coming out, that's not, it's, if you wanna get information on that, you'll have to uh, hop on my website and book a call with me. Right now, I don't have a landing page quite yet for that one, but that one's called Just One Touch. And that'll be coming out later. And that's going to be, I co authored that with my colleague Lori, and that'll be coming out later this year. And that will also be available on Amazon. But I will have a link. They can book a call. I'll have a book a call link if they want to have lab work read or if they just want to consult with me. I'll leave that link with you as well. And then my website is graceanatomyfunctionalhealth.com. So they can connect with me there. But I do functional labs. I have my book has a lot of information in it as well. We'll drop the morning routine, which will be a series. It's a PDF that they'll be able to download and with a checklist, but then they'll get a series of emails with tips and tricks from me as well.
Awesome. So can't wait to get it so that I can download my stuff. So exciting, exciting. And so this has been another episode of Sister Leaders Podcast. And look, I would be remiss, not to mention I would get my hand slapped if I didn't mention my upcoming conference that is October 2nd and 3rd. I know it's in October, but look, we are already starting promoting it because October would be here before you know it. And so we are going back to the casino over at Rivers Casino in Portsmouth, Virginia. This will be year 3 at the casino. This will be year 6 for the conference. And our theme this year for the whole year, remember, our theme is for the whole year, is purpose led, profit focused. And remember, I believe if you follow your purpose, the profit will come, not the other way around. Because if you follow the dollar, that can lead you down some dark streets. So follow your purpose and the profit will come. And so, of course, the conference website, is sisterleaders with an S conference.com. And we're just getting started with the conference planning and everything. And so, yeah, we are going back this year. We're going to have a good time and stay connected and make sure that you keep your ear to the ground so that you'll know when Beth's coming back. Because I have more questions. If you could see my paper here, I have
I
more
see that.
questions. I have more questions. And so, Beth, thank you. And thank you, sister leaders. And until the next episode, bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.